Well, the political winds could be shifting in the wake of Tuesday's Republican presidential debate. Most analysts now predict a coming showdown between Senators Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, with Rubio being called the candidate to watch and Cruz gaining the support of the more conservative base. Here is Senator Cruz during Tuesday's debate talking about immigration.
For millions of Americans at home watching this, it is a very personal economic issue. And I will say the politics of it would be very, very different if a bunch of lawyers or bankers were crossing the Rio Grande. And I will say for those of us who believe people ought to come to this country legally and we should enforce the law, we're tired of being told it's anti-immigrant. It's offensive.
Senators Cruz and Rubio are both Cuban Americans, but on immigration they have completely different philosophies. Here's Senator Rubio this morning on America's Newsroom.
People overstaying visas are going to be deported. That's how you enforce immigration laws. The flip side of it is I do not believe you can round up and deport 11 million people, especially people that have been here 15 years, have not otherwise violated the law, can pass background checks and so forth. And there's got to be a process to deal with that realistically.
Let's talk about it with Lynn Sweet, Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Molly Hemingway is senior editor of The Federalist. Thank you both for joining us today. Lynn, do you see this race coming down to a clash between these two first-term senators? I mean, right now you've still got Ben Carson and Donald Trump atop the GOP field.
Well, this is the ripening second tier. It seems that they're both Cruz and Rubio want to occupy the same lanes, and I say that plural, where they could get some of the conservative vote and still position themselves as anti-establishment Republicans by still staying enough within the mainstream, because they are senators, they're not outsiders, to be there if and when Carson and Trump collapse.
Cruz seems to be taking a shot, Molly, at Marco Rubio's former support for the so-called Gang of Eight immigration bill, which he now says was a mistake. Is that going to be an Achilles heel for Marco Rubio?
Oh, absolutely. One of the interesting things about that debate the other night was that we started to see Cruz figure out his path to the nomination. So he understands that he does need to line up those conservative voters while also appealing to the establishment candidates. And part of that means weakening Rubio's impressions among those establishment voters. So that was a very smart move to point out that this is a huge problem for Rubio. He has tried to distance himself from it, and he has done a pretty good job of it, but he hasn't addressed everybody's concerns, and it will hurt him. The thing about Carson and Trump is they make it so that those traditional paths where you either line up the establishment vote or you line up the conservatives are a little bit more difficult. So anything Cruz can do to rip into Rubio's support there will help him. There
was another moment on stage the other night when he did that without mentioning Senator Rubio by name. I want to play that for you here.
You know, I mentioned that the 25 programs that I put out today, that I would eliminate them. Among them are corporate welfare like sugar subsidies. Let's take that as an example. Sugar subsidies. Sugar farmers farm on roughly 0.2% of the farmland in America, and yet they give 40% of the lobbying money. That sort of corporate welfare is why we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. I would end those subsidies to pay for defending this nation.
Lynn, if you are a Florida senator and you have voted for sugar subsidies in the past, does that make you a target?
Well, it makes you those sugar subsidies are more than just helping Florida. It helps the American candy industry. There's reasons why it stays there, and it also helps the ethanol industry made from soy, a product that is grown in Iowa, the home of the first presidential vote. So he's going, there's so much to unpack there, but the point of going over a sugar subsidy and trying to make this a Florida issue, I just think Cruz needs to grow bigger. There are umpteen subsidies he could have picked, and if you go after it, there's a lot. We'll see if he stays on this theme, because it is something to get the fiscal conservatives who may not care as much about the social issues that many of the GOP candidates are campaigning on.
All right, Lynn Sweet, Molly Hemingway, thank you.